Yes. All right. So that was really a wonderful introduction by Dr. Shankar. So thanks for that. And my fellow colleagues here, Sumer and Sanjita, I believe they're going to talk more details about what are the intellectual property filing trends in this area. So in between, what I'll do, I'll probably just try to bring a little bit scenario which is more specific to our country. So looking into that, hey, what are the drivers, for this technology, essentially being the electric vehicle, and I will also kind of try to talk a little bit about the overall trend which is there in the automotive sector in India currently. Because as we know, we are a developing country, the aspiration, the earning capacity is increasing, and we always crib about the number of cars which continue to be more and more on roads. So definitely this is a sector in India which is growing tremendously. And if we have to look at some of the data point that really proves its emergence. So currently, the automotive sector is almost about 7% of the overall GDP of our country, India. And it is 45% of the overall manufacturing GDP, so which is huge. So which is just coming from the manufacturing of the different kind of, I would say, automotive vehicles. And when I'm talking about that, I'm considering all the segments, whether they are two-wheelers, they are four-wheelers, the passenger car segments, and all those commercial vehicles. So that makes our country the fifth largest country from the production point of view in the world. And the trends are showing that sooner we would be kind of scaling up in that ladder. So that's kind of a tremendous amount of opportunity in India in all segments. I'd said, whether it is a two-wheeler segment, it's a passenger car, or it's a commercial vehicle segment. Within passenger cars also, all different kind of segments from low to mid to the luxury segment, they're all continue to grow. And if we take a look at, what sorts of investment in terms of money, the dollar which is getting into this sector, so we have, this sector is open for 100% foreign direct investment. And we have, India as a country has received close to 20 billion of FDI in past 15 to 20 years in this sector. Some of the recent examples, if we see Hyundai, which is planning to, or they're really close to kind of making their investment almost up to $1 billion by 22 in some of the existing facilities and also with some of the new ones. I talked about that it's not only some segments, even the luxury segments like Mercedes, they have been continuously increasing, I would say, their scale-up production. And currently, the plant in, Mercedes plant in Pune, that produces almost 20,000 units, which is really a big amount of Mercedes units. Those are being produced out of that. Now, that's in general is the automotive sector in India. That gives us a sense about the volumes associated with it, also the amount of money which is associated with this sector. Now, if we talk about electric vehicle in particular, because that is one of the, as Dr. Shankar has explained, there are three major verticals being electric vehicles, autonomous car, and the connected cars. And there's a lot of activity around electrical vehicles that we keep hearing about, and how the overall ecosystem around electric mobility is increasing. So if we take a look at that, so the government in India is driving a lot of initiatives, and they're pushing really hard for the electric mobility sector, and they're targeting making the whole sector, at least the commercial and the government-owned transportation sector, convert that about 40% of that into electric mobility sector in next, I would say, 1 or 2 years. that's really, I would say, it can be a big target, but those are the targets which are being set forth, and they eventually kind of gives an idea about that how much push is there, from the government and from the whole industry around that. If we take just one particular component of the electric vehicle, which is the powertrain, which is essentially like manages a lot of things, or I would say like, the basic thing which is going to drive the electric car, that is getting manufactured in India, and it has been growing at the CAGR of 26% past couple of years. And the projection is that it would continue to grow even at faster rates. There is about 5 million units which are projected by 2020 in terms of number of cars which would be sold in the electric vehicle category. Government has invested significant amount of money through different policies. A framework, one of them is FAME, which is faster adoption and manufacturing of electric vehicle. Around that, they have invested close to $16 million investment into this, so that the adoption of this technology is happening faster. Now, since we're talking about the government policies, if we take the FAME is one, and there are many other programs which government is putting forward to further push the growth in this particular sector. Some of them are like National Electric Mobility Mission Plan, some of Automotive Mission Plan, which says that the target is to make the production not just for electric vehicle, but overall sector almost 4 times in next couple of years. Or when I say couple of years in this particular case, we are talking about almost a decade. There are things like National Automotive Testing and R&D Infrastructure Project, NATRIP, which is a new initiative and which is essentially focused around the testing, validation, and some of the research and development part of it. And the government's target is that how such kind of facility in India can be made world-class, where the testing, validation, and certain other aspects can happen at a much, much faster rate, so that the overall adoption to electric vehicle technology becomes much more faster. So that is the sense that, or the sense of urgency that government has, and the push that is going into this direction, which is going to be one of, I would say, the critical factor. And I'm talking about in India, but the overall, this sector is continuing to grow, especially in the electric vehicle and the other car segments. So, as Dr. Shankar said, that this is probably the best time to be in this industry or in this area. So is the case if we speak in particular to the Indian context. Now, some of the challenges in terms of technical advancement, and Dr. Shankar has put it, in a perfect way, in a manner that everybody can understand. So I might be repeating some of those quickly. And first, I will talk more from a general automotive sector point of view. So we know that industry is kind of, other than the emission standards which are evolving and the compliance of the vehicles to those emission standards and the technologies which are related to that, are some of the challenges in a general sector. In addition to that, in a general automotive sector, things like how the fuel efficiency can be improved or the payload can be decreased. So those are some of the, I would say, the classical technologies which need to be addressed. More from the electric vehicle point of view, Dr. Shankar talked about the battery technology. Not just, there's a lot of happening in the battery space. So, the key here is that the battery capacity has to be higher. So if there are like surveys done currently, at least in India or even in global, any battery capacity has to be more than 60 kilowatt per hour from the charging standpoint, so that at least it can charge in one go, or one charge, at least the vehicle can go for more than about 200 miles, which is probably one of the demand or one of the expectations that the customer has in this segment. Other than the battery technology, powertrain, though it is more established from the engineering and technology point of view, but coming to India as a country, I think a lot more needed to be done from the infrastructure and the further investment point of view, mostly from the point of view of supply chain and the integration. So that is one challenge I would see. There is a challenge with respect to the infrastructure, whether it is the road infrastructure or the overall infrastructure, which is going to be available for the consumers from the electric charging point of view. So as we have seen in the previous presentation, some of the countries, in order to solve the charging problem, they are laying the electric roads. So I'm not going in that direction. That's probably very, very advanced and requires much more investment, but more as are there going to be enough number of charging stations, looking at the number of vehicles that we see on the road. So what measures need to be taken in that? So that is going to be one issue which need to be addressed more from the infrastructure point of view. Fast charging, which is again in a way correlated with the battery technology. So and also some of it is related to some of the controls. So that's something which has to be addressed. So these are challenges, technical, and my fellow colleagues are going to talk more in terms of that, how the IP trend is there, how different kind of technologies are evolving. Beyond that, of course, there is a softer issue to this, which is a challenge, and Dr. Shankar has shown one picture of a vehicle or car where people are looking at that and they're thinking different things in terms of, hey, it is an expensive car, or maybe it's probably I'll not be able to drive it for 50 kilometers. So overall awareness among the consumer, that has to be kind of addressed, and that has to be addressed probably through some technology developments and more making them comfortable with the kind of infrastructure that they can rely on, right? So whether it is the charging stations, is it the battery swapping mechanisms, or different things, so that the reservation towards this technology goes away. Because right now, if from especially in the passenger car segment, nobody would want to buy a car which is going to run after a charging station of 4 to 6 hours and it runs only 100 kilometers, right? So that's definitely can be addressed by technical challenge with the new technology and also with the infrastructure associated with it. However, some of the more, I would say, the pre-decided or organized sectors, like we can talk about the BMTC bus service in Bangalore, and similar, like look at a fleet of ground transport at airports. So those things are much more organized because they're, how much they're going to run, and that is going to be there. So that's one segment which is, of course, going to pick that much more in advance from the timelines point of view, whereas the passenger car segment, of course, it would be, I would say, a longer journey towards that adoption. So that was the softer issue in terms of that, how this market would further mature from the adaptability point of view. So with this, I'm kind of covered most of the macro level trends and macro level factors which eventually in a way would be influencing this sector. So overall, we see the technical challenges, we see there is an expectation from the customer is there, but looking at the advancements which are happening, looking at the amount of push is coming from the government and from the rest of, I would say, the bodies, this is a sector definitely which is poised for a rapid growth. So with that, I'll just take a pause, and maybe we can take questions now or later during the discussion.
Probably we'll wait for questions towards the end of the session so we have time for the other speakers to get through.